Hello, everybody. Welcome to the This Is Effing Hard podcast. My name's Lloyd Stokes. And if you haven't heard the podcast before, then as a refresher, myself and Martin Sutton earlier in 2025 decided that there needed to be more conversations with founders and leaders of early stage or scaling businesses, telling the story of what it's really like to grow something, to build something, what goes well, what doesn't go well, what you should be aware of, successes, failures, etc. And hopefully, the idea is that we'll interview a whole host of different interesting people who are on that journey or have been on that journey, and we'll get some really unique insights, some true kind of authenticity along the way. It's supposed to be a warts and all kind of chat. Nothing is off limits when it comes to talking about that journey. And today, I am joined by Charles. Is the founder of a business called MonetizeAI. I will let him talk a lot more about that in a minute. But what you need to know is that Charles and I met a few years ago when we actually placed him into an organization called Cover Genius off the back of him having an incredible start to his career working with not some of the largest technology brands in the world. Charles, delighted for you to join us. Thank you for giving your time. Let's kick straight into it. Tell us, I know we were just talking before we started about the fact that this is amongst all the busy weeks, this is a busier week than most, and that it's launch week for Monetize AI. Introduce yourself, tell us about what the business is doing and what's going on in launch week.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Lloyd. So yeah, I think the first thing to kick off is introducing Monetize AI. So yeah, Monetize AI is an all-in-one no-code platform to help anyone create, discover, and monetize AI agents. So the whole aim around it was really giving access to people to AI agents, where a lot of people, they don't really have access to build their AI agents. And then after that, what's next? How do you monetize it? So that's something we're really looking to democratize. I guess launch week with any company, it's always a bit of a crazy time. I think many people, when they look at launch week, they think it's the be all and end all of your company, right? Launch week has to, people think launch week has to really, you have to get huge influx of users and everything needs to go perfectly. But I don't really have that perspective. I think every day, every week is launch week for your company because it's really a marathon. I guess with Monetize AI, we had a couple hundred users before launching. So we've been doing private beta for a couple months now, been growing pretty organically. So we've not actually done any formal marketing for Monetize AI. But before that, my focus has always been on treating Monetize AI like a marathon rather than a sprint. So I guess for launch week, the aim was really to just formalize to everyone, our existing customers and the world, that we're ready to rumble and
Yeah.
everyone publicly can use Monetize AI. But the expectation wasn't really to have a massive influx in users. We did obviously have a spike of users coming on the platform, but I guess for launch week, it's just really the preparation for that marathon. So we can obviously organically build our user base over time. This week has been a bit busy because with launch week, there's two perspectives when you're building a technology company that you have to focus on. One is the technical side, platform stability, and the other side is obviously keeping momentum with users going on the platform. So I don't want to get too technical, but yeah, for launch week, and I'm sure it's very similar for other technology companies out there, but yeah, we've had to do a lot around DevOps with the platform to make sure it's stable and deal with a lot of spikes. So this means being very careful not to break anything, but things always
Yeah.
break. So I remember, my goodness, this week has been a bit crazy. On launch day, it was about an hour after I'd we've launched, the platform went down. Like literally the platform went down.
No.
Yeah, so the platform literally went down. You can imagine how stressful that was. And this is to do with the whole DevOps stuff, being able to ensure your platform is ready for spikes, ensure that the platform is ready for an uptick of users. So we spend a good couple hours just making sure that the platform is able to deal with an increase in users. So that's a big part of my week as well. We've been working a lot on DevOps, And on the other end, just trying to like maintain the momentum of onboarding users and just making sure that we're keeping the momentum. Yeah, that's a bit touching a bit of iceberg. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. It's exactly that, isn't it? The iceberg is, yeah, such a good example. I think, yeah, a
Mm.
lot going on. It's fortuitous that we've timed this on the same week, but I think that I've actually this is the first episode I've done with a founder who's actually going through this right now, and I think that
Yeah.
even in 6 minutes we've covered the fact that it's by no means plain sailing. I always like to, when I'm interviewing guests, take it back to early life and growing up. The story of being a child and those kind of, what did you want to do? I've yet to speak to anyone who's told me that they were going to be a founder, actually, and let alone a technology founder. But growing up, tell us about the influences that you had, but also
Yeah.
maybe any ideas or aspirations that you had around what you wanted to do.
I always love that question. So I'm probably going to break that streak because, to be fair, the very first thing I ever wanted to be was a Power Ranger. If I'm
Okay,
being honest,
okay.
specifically the Red Ranger. But I guess I am some in some form of Power Ranger right now, feeling like a superhero kind of
I
thing
love
as
that
well.
spin.
But yeah, so when I realized I couldn't be a Power Ranger, I've always had big aspirations since I've been young. I think when I was very young, I discovered that I have that entrepreneurial flair, that I want to build something bigger than myself. So when I was like literally when I was like I think very early teens or even maybe like pre-teens, I'd follow my parents to the car boot sale. I'd buy a whole bunch of things for super cheap. So I'd use the pocket money I'd saved up. And then I'd buy stuff and try and flip it on eBay. And then I hit a gold mine at one point where I discovered that drills, they were really profitable. They had a really good return on investment. So I'll buy like a drill for £10,
Yeah,
some of those Makita drills as well.
yeah,
But there's a bit of a high risk because I'd buy a couple, some of them wouldn't work, some of them maybe would work, so huge risk. So I guess that's probably why I'm so crazy now. I'm such a huge risk taker. But what I do is that I'll come home and flip up YouTube and try and fix the drills. Some of them I'd be able to fix, some of them I wouldn't. But anyways, I was able to do this for a couple years and end up making a bit of money from buying and selling things from eBay. And then I was like, wow, like this whole entrepreneurial thing's amazing. Like I can literally buy something, add some value and make money. Like, damn, I'm going to be a millionaire. So then at the age of 16, I was like, I started getting into technology and a lot of like my friends and classmates, they'd always ask me to tutor them. So I used to get really high grades, etc. So like people wanted me to tutor them, etc. And I couldn't tutor everyone in my class. So what I did was I was like, why don't I build like a technology company to actually help people with tutoring? So I was
yeah.
16 when this happened. So then I decided to found Just Help Live,
Okay,
JHL, which was an online tutoring platform for students to basically come on the platform and yeah, they can have an online classroom and obviously find tutors on this platform. So I built that, ran that, scaled that. And then when I was in like university, I ended up exiting it. And then that experience really taught me about building a tech company, how difficult it is, but how much opportunity there is in helping loads of people's lives. So I got a really like very early insight into that. And at that point, I knew that my life, I'm going to be a founder, like no matter what. But at this point, after exiting Just Help Live, I was in uni. I was still trying to figure out, okay, do I start up another company now, or should I explore other stuff? So this was like a really interesting point in my life. For anyone that is like a natural founder, you almost just always want to stick to building companies. But also when you're also young, you know the world is your oyster and you don't want to limit yourself. At this point, I was thinking of how big can I go? There was loads of different careers, different things I was thinking at this point. I was thinking of potentially getting into investment banking, getting into tech. So I did a whole bunch of internships at different investment banks, some of like your known investment banks, Morgan Stanley, etc. And then I
Mm.
figured out, nope, I hate investment banks. This is not for me. Like, I cannot do this. There's no way I can do this. So then I ended up looking into technology, which was awesome. I ended up getting an internship at Google. So then at Google, I built loads of great connections and I got loads of advice from a lot of people and I met a
Mm.
lot of entrepreneurs there. And then I got advice from, he was the chief operating officer at Google at the time. So like he used to mentor me, etc. And then like I told him about my journey and what I want to do in the future. And he gave me the advice that you're young, always go for your dreams, but also you can learn a lot within the corporate world. Just make
Mm.
sure, that you leverage the corporate world as best as you can. You don't have to stay there forever. And this, after speaking with a lot of people, I figured out that, yeah, what would a few years in the corporate world do to harm me? It will probably help me learn a lot more, meet a lot of people, and build strong connections. And it's done just that. Ended up doing that, and I ended up getting a role at Microsoft within data and AI, and that kind of kicked off a lot for me. Yeah, I
Good
mean,
start though. It's look, to be 16 and to do that, there aren't lots of people that you meet who do that and build something and high achieve on the academic side as well. And I love the advice around the corporate experience. And I actually give that to quite a lot of people, not necessarily, I get, let's say that they're earlier on in their career, first 5 years of their career, and they've maybe come out of education and then come to work in a couple of startups. Maybe had some success, maybe not, but you can spot that they have high potential and maybe they are actually ultimately of that entrepreneurial mindset and actually they're not quite finding the need to fit. I often give the advice to go and work in a big corporate because I think that the balance of the two experiences is actually really is incredibly valuable.
yeah,
And you won't know, it's an obvious thing to say, I know, but you won't know what it's like to be and operate in a big corporate unless you actually are in a big corporate. You
exactly.
may have friends doing it, but it's not the same. I'm curious to understand, like, what if you reflect on what you took from your experiences specifically at Google and Microsoft,
Mm,
and you could think about maybe one thing that you've really taken with you when
mm.
it comes to building monetize AI now, and also maybe one thing that you've definitely left behind from that experience, what would they be?
Yeah, good question. I think the first thing is relationships. Like you really realize that relationships matter so much in life. They matter a lot in life because the people around you can be your biggest supporters. You can learn a lot from people. I think my experience for Microsoft is I built great relationships with some of my colleagues at Microsoft. Some people at Microsoft are still my friends from today. I'd
Mm.
say that's the first thing. I think the second thing as well is really being an operator and having a lot of responsibility. Very quickly at Microsoft, I was managing millions in revenue, very large clients. I had to be an entrepreneur within my role, especially the kind of role I had. So I think within that role at Microsoft, so I was an AI lead. So it was a half technical, half sales role. And that's very
Mm.
relevant to what I'm doing now because
Mm.
I'm half technical, half sales. So
Yeah.
I'm very technical, but also very salesy. Being at Microsoft helped me to learn how to manage that,
Mhm.
especially within the role where you have a role where you have to be very technical, but also focus on the business side of things. That skill set is very rare. And there's actually not that many roles that enable you to do that. Um,
Yeah, true.
so I'd say that's a big thing. I think what I'm happy leaving behind at, at Microsoft is big tech, big corporations, is that you're a drop of water in an ocean, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the day, there's only so much impact you can make. That's the reality. I think the great thing about big corporations, they give you your belts, right? You work somewhere like Microsoft, work somewhere like Google, etc. You have your belts that help build credibility, which is very important. Besides that credibility, it's difficult to leverage that credibility still within the organization because you're not going to change Microsoft as a this $1 trillion organization. So that is something that honestly I'm happy leaving behind because I'm an entrepreneur and the whole purpose of my life is to make huge change.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
And so our paths then cross at that kind of intersection of leaving Microsoft, and you joined Cover Genius,
Yeah.
much smaller, much earlier stage business. Was that was that all part of the plan? Was that the last block, I guess, that you were looking to put in place?
Yeah. It's so interesting how that happened because so when I left Microsoft, thinking of me leaving Microsoft, there was three options for me that I have. So my life is very interesting because I plan everything. Not everything goes to plan, but I always try and think a year, 5 years ahead. I always knew that I'd only spend a couple years at Microsoft. And I was thinking of, okay, what's after Microsoft? And there was three options for me that would like align towards my future. The first one, I was potentially thinking of getting into VC.
Mm,
So I was actually speaking to a couple of VC firms and they're looking at like maybe VC might be an interesting path for me in terms of a segue to that
mm,
entrepreneurship. Because again, remember, I've always known I'm going to be an entrepreneur. The second option was just starting up my own company. So leaving Microsoft and just going full time entrepreneurship. But I never really felt I was ready for that at that point because I never really had a solid idea that
mm.
I felt I could scale. At this point, I already had a business, Biofusions, doing very well, and it was an e-commerce business. And I've always wanted to build a tech company, not an e-commerce business. It was not
Yeah.
something I had heavy passion for. And then
So that's running alongside this as well.
yeah, so I'm not really actively running Biofusions
Yeah. Yeah.
now. It's something that's super passive. Yeah, and that was always the plan, right? It's something that's super passive, and I want to build a tech company I can put 100% into. Again, because I wanted to build a VC backable tech company, the one that
Mm.
could
Hmm.
become a unicorn, and that's the
Hmm.
whole aim of Monetize AI. And then the third option was for me to join a startup, an early stage
Yeah.
startup, as a segue and build that startup experience. I've already built my own startup. I've had experience at a very large organization, but I've never actually worked at a startup that's scaling.
Yeah.
So to really be in the weeds of that. So then I obviously came across like a couple like startups at this point. I got offers from some very fast growing startups as well. But then Cover Genius came into play and I was really intrigued by the role, by their mission, what they're doing, etc. And I thought, oh, this could be a great place for me to build the startup experience. But I told myself this is going to be my last job, like in the corporate world. And I told my manager, my boss at that time, that this is going to be my last job. I'm an entrepreneur, and yeah, that's like how I kind of segued into Cover Genius.
Do you know what I find interesting about that as well is that I still know people at Cover Genius,
Yeah,
and I know their head of talent. They have a strong internal talent model, so we don't work with them anymore. But
yeah,
I know that they're a business just from some of the people that I know that actually quite it encourages and cultivates that entrepreneurial spirit.
mm,
There's and it's really an interesting play, I think, because if you're building a fast growth business and you want to achieve amazing things, you need lots of different people. But some of the characteristics that you need are those people, those individuals, of the entrepreneur, the yous of this world,
yeah,
and yet you're hiring that person
mm,
knowing that you know that at some point they're going to turn around and say, "Now's my time. I'm going." And actually, the reality is that you've got to accept that and you've got
mm,
to embrace it and nurture it, and also be like, "That's okay. I know that this is only a part of your journey." And I think that's a hard thing to do, and I think a lot of companies don't do that for fear of they don't see the upside, they only see the downside.
yeah,
And actually, if you look at the upside is huge because you hire incredible talent, smart people. Sure, they're not going to be people who stay with the business for 10 years probably, but
mm,
if they stay for 2 or 3 and they give you everything because they want to get everything as well,
yeah.
it's a win-win.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. I completely agree. And that's my mindset, even with hiring for Monetize AI, etc. I think the best people that will perform, that will think outside of the box, are not the people that want just a safety net through their entire lives, which there's nothing bad with that. But it's really weighing comfort versus uncomfort. You bring someone
Yeah.
on board that is comfortable being uncomfortable, there's someone that
Mm.
is most likely going to really push themselves. And it's not always about how long you stay it's not really about how long you stay at a company, but it's how much impact you make while you're at that company, right? You could hire someone that wants to stay with you for 10, 20 years, but they don't make as much impact as someone that's been at the company for 1 year. And impact
Mm.
can be measured in many different ways, right? It can be measured culturally, it can be measured in terms of obviously bringing in revenue for the company, ideas. There's many ways people can bring impact for a company. But what I tend to see is those people that are really comfortable being uncomfortable and have that
Mm.
entrepreneurial builder mindset, they tend to thrive. But obviously, very much at early stage companies, I think when you're looking at companies like Microsoft, like Google, etc., it it is a bit of a different skill set
Of course it
because
is.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What have you found the hardest part so far of doing? I would say like building your own business, but obviously you've
Mm,
done it that before. But actually building this business,
yeah.
you're really early on, I know. But so far, what's been the hardest challenge that you faced?
Wow, I've faced so many hard challenges. It's this is definitely the most challenging thing I've ever done in my whole life. And I have built businesses before, but building a business that you build into this scale and magnitude, I think the first thing that I'd say that's relatable for any founder or entrepreneur is when you're building a business, it's a lonely journey, right? They say the journey to the top is a lonely journey, and that's truly it, right? It's a consistent mental battle against yourself, right? Where
Mm.
every day you need to prove to yourself that this is worthwhile doing, right? Even from the early stages before you've launched and you're trialing things out and you have that anxiety, oh my goodness, is this going to work or not? Are we going to get enough users, right? Is this the right fit? There's these consistent mental challenges that you
Mm.
need to fight and deal with. And the reason why that is a big challenge is because the realization in building any company is that you have to be your biggest supporter of your company, right? No one in life is going to believe in you more than you, right? And
Yep.
the only way people can really believe in you is if you believe in yourself. And if you don't
Mm.
believe in what you're doing, then honestly, it's probably not going to work and it's probably not worthwhile doing it. So ensuring that I am there mentally. I
Mhm.
am consistently performing at my highest capability has been a
Yeah.
big challenge because I have late nights and some nights I'll only be sleeping for 4 or 5 hours. And you have to be very careful because that can become a habit. I think
Mhm.
there's this thing about being a founder that you need to grind hard, and that's true. But something that I am seeing and learning now is you really need to prioritize your health and your mental well-being first before the grind because you can't operate to your highest potential if you are not at your peak performance, and that should actually take priority over everything else because everything else will follow, everything else will be good as long as you kind of focus on your mental well-being, your physical well-being. I guess the second thing I'll say in terms of the challenge of things is trying to operate very quickly. I
Mm.
think startups move fast, everything moves fast, but things always seem like they just don't move fast enough. You'll have a plan to, let's say, go live
Yep.
after a month, still keep things super lean. 1 month can turn to 2 months. So it's that balance, right? How do you move quickly but still ensure everything you do is high quality? And I think it's like a yin yang thing where we're trying to build the best potential and scalable and secure platform. What features do we deprioritize, right? In our go to market, what kind of like platforms are we focusing on? Because we can't do everything, right? What kind of content are we producing with the resources we have? It's really that scale, right? Continuously tipping that is a challenge. I think for me, it's something that you master over time. And to be fair, you don't ever completely master it. I've spoken to founders that have billion-dollar organizations. That the truth is that it's the same kind of problems, but just in a different capacity. It just doesn't stop. So yeah, I
I
definitely say
think
those two things.
I think that to those 2 points in reverse order, I think there is an acceptance that you building something is a balance of
Mm,
speed. It's a balance of going fast and going slow
yeah.
in that time.
Mm,
And so, yeah, there's this constant kind of like speed to get things. But actually, what I find from speaking to I'm speaking to a lot of different people is that sometimes the ability to know when to go fast and when to go slow is actually a really key
Yeah.
a key skill and trait, because you can get into the habit of just constantly going fast. And to your point,
Mm,
on two, I guess, two elements to that. One is that going fast all the time doesn't necessarily mean you're always making the best decisions
mm,
or going in the right direction all the time. But the second point is that from a human perspective, you won't achieve your peak performance by going fast
yeah.
24/7 all the time. And it's interesting because one of the other people that I'll interview on this season 2 of the podcast is a guy called Casper Rose, who's
Mm,
the CEO, or was the CEO and now general manager of a business called Fresh Fitness Food, who
mm,
nutrition platform for well, originally for people who are really into their fitness in London, and then recently the business got acquired by a much larger organization to scale. Really interesting story. But he talks about the high performance elements of nailing your nutrition and your fitness to make sure, because that ultimately you have to lead a business or scale a business or found a business and approach it in exactly the same way as a high performance athlete would, because
mm,
your body, your mind, and everything else needs to be firing at its optimum capability for you to achieve.
yeah.
And that is there's a consistent theme there, founders that I speak to who do certainly more nowadays, I think, prioritize those elements as much as just the hustle culture, just
Mm.
like, I just work. There's a balance that I think you need to have.
Yeah, correct. I think I completely agree with that. And I think that balance is core and key. It's definitely a journey because there's times that are high, low, but it's a priority. And I think culturally across social media, just generally, it's not something that's focused on as much. It's the messaging around that is usually, as a founder, just grind. It's never really look after your health, think about
Yeah,
mental
exactly that.
well-being. Yeah, so it's an important thing that I've had to learn myself, especially at this point, because I
Mm.
put my hands up through my journey. I still try my best to stay fit, but I work very hard.
Yeah.
And you can work hard, but I think that should never take the priority. It should always be your well-being and then everything else.
Completely, yeah. It's a topic I'm learning more and more about, and I just think somebody I spoke to a long time ago, I've known for a long time, so he talked about it's specific to sales, but he basically said, aren't we doing ourselves a disservice in enterprise sales functions across the world, because we talk about high performance as if we're some kind of Premier League football team or Olympic athlete, but actually if we really are passionate about high performance and meeting the levels that those kind of organizations or people do, then how about we start living a few more of in a way that they do.
Mm,
And it's not just the physical, it's the mental. It's having the tools and the support around you to be able to deliver high performance day after day. And actually, I really liked that way of thinking about it, because there is no difference. You're trying to build, like you said it earlier, you're trying to build a unicorn. That's what you want to do. That's going to
mm,
require that's your World Cup final, your Premier League title, whatever
mm.
Olympic gold medal. The hours and time that you need to put in there, there's no shortcut to that.
Yeah.
That's the reality. No, it's really interesting. What do you anticipate? It might be hard to answer this question right now, but I'm always interested to understand from founders the levers that they might use in order to enable scale, and at different stages, right? So it really depends on where you're at. But what are you doing, if you're happy to share right now, to achieve the next kind of objective, like the next kind of landmark of growth? What are the scale? And is there anything within that this is that maybe surprised you in its success?
Mm, yeah, I think the at this stage of any company, actually, to be fair, at any stage, community is really key. Building a community for your business is very key, and I think your business at early stages, especially, is the community that you have. So when it comes to building your community, I think there's many different ways to look at it, especially if you're a business that's trying to build a following, trying to build a user base. That's really about understanding where your customers are. I know it sounds like 101, but the reality is that I think as a founder, you need to really know where your customers are sitting, are spending most of their time. And This can be across multiple different platforms. When we're talking about social media, you have different platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, etc.
Yeah,
There's loads
yeah,
of pockets of communities within these platforms with millions or billions of people where your ideal customers are. It's super important to spend time there, understand what is going on. I think listening is always very important, and that's a big thing I did before building Monetize AI, and a big reason why Monetize AI is what it is today. Just understand what your target audience is saying, and then from there, start building a community. Because the reality is that no one will know what you're building unless you say. But the listening part is super important because you don't just want to put something out there, you want to put relevant things out there to people so they understand what you're building, but in relation to them, so it's relevant to them. So in terms of that scale, it's really being in the right environments, right? Especially in the digital environments where your community is at, and then
yeah,
start building a community. And I think scale does not always mean a burst of growth. And to my point around launching, things compound. This whole compounding effect. Warren Buffett, great. Compounding is very important in life, and I think every founder needs to look at their business as a massive compounding effect, right? Where
mhm,
every action you take every day will compound to eventually be a massive. So when you're building those communities, view it as that, right? Every day be consistent, be, within the places where your communities are, and then you're basically doing something I call community migration. That's part of our go to market. We're migrating communities from different platforms onto our platform, and over time that compounds, because when you have a platform with strong network effects, a platform that delivers value, people tell people and things compound and grow. And that's what we saw before launch. We never did any marketing or anything, but we just got signups organically just from being within communities and word of mouth. I think the second scale lever that I would say, besides your go to market, is your actual platform. I think many organizations, especially early days, builds their platform just to deliver a straight immediate value, whatever that is. Maybe it's a platform that helps users, I don't know, write CVs or monetize AI, build AI agents and monetize them. But from day one, it's important to think about how your platform can create network effects. So network effects are very important whenever you're building a company, because that's what enables the compounding, right? So what we've built into Monetize AI is different features that enable network effects, right? So people can, number one, stay on the platform, but bring other people into the platform as well. What you end up seeing is that this enables that compounding effect, which
mm,
ultimately delivers scale. So I think it's always important to look at those two elements. Yes, you'll go to market in terms of actual marketing, but your go to market also matters in the platform you build, right? In terms of helping people to promote your business for you. Yeah, so those are the two scale elements I would say.
I think the one of the key takeaways from that, though, is that where you started from at the beginning, which
Mm.
was actually talking to people and listening
Yeah.
to who you thought would be your potential customers, and actually then builds to their needs, their requirements, something that is highly valuable.
Mm.
It's still there are so many companies I've spoken to in the last 5 years who are at really early stage, just the founders, maybe a couple of engineers, but that's it. They've built an interesting piece of technology, but I'm like,
Mm.
what problem is this solving, and to
Yeah.
what audience? And they're like, oh, like to everyone, or yeah, and it honestly is like that. And you're like, and they just what happens almost always is they just go through these so many pivots.
Yeah.
So like they're constantly pivoting the product to try and find a use case
Mm.
that really works, and so they then redesign everything to then address that problem, product market fit, etc. If they get it really wrong, then they historically maybe hire salespeople to sell a product that they can't sell because they don't know who to sell it to.
Mm.
So there's no point in having the scale levers if you don't understand the audience. That yeah, and yeah, it makes a huge amount of sense. And yeah, like I said, I think more people, if they're listening to this, should really listen to that point, because it
Mm.
is. You said it's 101, but it absolutely is 101. And I
Mm,
don't think people remember that enough. Two great points. Um, we kind of touched on this a bit, but if you think about like your experience now of starting and growing multiple businesses, what's the biggest myth that exists?
mm,
And obviously, we talked already about the fact that it just that it's huge amounts of hard work. It's huge
mm.
toll mentally. It can be lonely. There's lots of different things. But outside of those, is there anything else that you maybe thought or read or see, especially on like social media
Mm.
platforms, that you just go, do you know what? Based on my experience, that just is not true. That's complete nonsense.
Yeah, I probably got quite a lot, but I'd say there is quite a bit. I think the first one that's probably an obvious one is the startup life is not sexy, right? I
Yeah.
think it's very glamorized to be a founder. And because of that, a lot of people end up getting into entrepreneurship when their heart really is not in it and end up getting crushed. The reality is that being a founder, don't come into it if you think it's going to be a sexy, wonderful experience, because it is the absolute opposite of that. But the whole point of it is for it to eventually be an amazing, rewarding experience at the end. But that's just not exactly how it is, because it's not easy, right? It's like being dragged across the mud. And if you're fine being dragged across the mud, then become a founder. And if you're not, run away. That's the reality of it. It's not sexy. I'd say another one is, I think a lot of people, especially when you're building a company that you want to be VC backed, is that you need to have a co-founder to start. That is one of the biggest myths out there, right? Don't need a co-founder to start a business. You need you to start a business and deliver something to make it into a business. But there's different levers you can have in order for your business to be successful.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't end up starting companies because they are just too scared, because they think, oh, I don't have a co-founder, I can't start today. And then someone else ends up starting the company and scaling it. You have some of the largest organizations today were built without co-founders. Meta, Mark Zucks, he originally started it on his own. He built a team around him. You have Amazon, right? Amazon, Jeff Bezos, he was a solo founder, but he still built a team. And to that point, right, you can start something without having a co-founder, but eventually you'll need to build a team. I think an important thing for anyone that wants to build something is don't wait for anyone. Finding a co-founder is one of the most important things you'll ever do for your business. And I've seen a lot of people, a lot of businesses that have absolutely crumbled because of poor co-founder relationships, right? It's the yin yang thing, right? Your co-founder can
Mm.
make your business or destroy your business. Something that you need to spend the most amount of time on is finding your co-founder if you do need one. But not every business as well needs a co-founder. I think as a founder, you need to look at your skill set. Can you actually build it? Fortunately for me, I'm very technical, so I understand every technical thing. I can do a lot of technical stuff, and I'm also very business focused. I have sales experience, biz dev experience, so able to actually build a company without a co-founder now. But it does
Mhm.
not mean that, again, like, I might not end up getting a co-founder. I already have a team as well. I think just identify what your strengths are, identify what your weaknesses are, leverage your strengths. And if you don't have a co-founder right there, find different levers that you need to actually just get your product out to market. When your product's out in market, people are loving your product, it attracts great people. It's much easier to find a co-founder that way. And you might not even need a co-founder. You can get developers and other people. But that's something I really want to put out there, because I think it kills a lot of people's dreams. People are consistently thinking, I can't do this idea
Yeah,
without a co-founder.
it's an interesting perspective. I think I probably fell into that category as well. Look, it's
Mm,
interesting because I set up a small business by myself as well, and
mm,
actually, probably along the way, I've seen other companies grow way faster, way quicker than us by
mm,
having co-founders or setting up. And so sometimes you look over your shoulder and think, I wish I had that. But then I guess what I've personally found is that if you can find a small network of people around you who you
mm,
trust, who have offer you different experiences, then actually that loneliness that can
Mm,
sometimes come is completely dissipated by
exactly.
being able to reach out to a trusted network who provides you with all the things that you need without necessarily having to have the co-founder. And to your point as well, geez, the amount of companies I think I've seen over well, actually probably the more interesting anecdote to share is the amount of candidates that I've spoken to
Mm,
over the years who have decided to leave their company because the co-founders have fallen out, or that's so true though. It
very common.
really is so true. Yeah, it's really common, and it just you spend all this time building something, and you hire and start building teams, and then you lose your team because they can see what's going on. They feel the tension. They see the discourse between two individuals,
Mm.
and or three individuals. Yeah, do however many you want, but that is great advice. Like really, 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 really great advice.
Mm. I would
Um,
like to add to that as well, especially in this day
mm,
and age with artificial intelligence, right? You can do stuff before that you couldn't. No code platforms. Like now with platforms like Lovable, or I guess Monetize AI as well, you can
yeah.
build stuff without code. And that's the whole aim, right, of Monetize AI. Like I use our platform very avidly, right? Whenever I think about even like marketing, I'm just like, oh, I'll build an AI agent for that. And I spin up an AI agent in a couple minutes on Monetize AI that can help relieve the time. Or if, I need to tweak a feature, right? You can do that without requiring certain skill sets. And I think as time goes on, you will find a higher influx of companies that don't have co-founders, right? Because now artificial intelligence is really changing that, where you
Mm,
can focus on what you're really good at and almost outsource what you're not great at with
mm,
technology. And that works very well at those early stages when you really need a co-founder, because the reality is that once your business is off the ground, you're getting revenue, traction, etc. You can then hire, right? You will then hire, and then you scale, and then you've built a company without needing a co-founder. You probably kept more equity in your company. But I just think now it's important to look at what we have around us. We're in a new age of artificial intelligence, and we are all basically able to be Power Rangers at the end of the day, superheroes with extended skills. And it's important for everyone to really identify that. And I don't think there's an excuse anymore nowadays to just not start something. I'm not saying to succeed, but at least to start, there's
yeah,
no
start. Yeah, yeah,
excuse.
yeah.
There's no excuse. Yeah.
It makes it. Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. The final question before we wrap things up.
Yeah.
You might not know. You may have actually. You've already said you're a planner. You might not want to disclose or not, but I'm always curious to understand if we record another episode 12 months from now and we talk around where the business is now. Where do you hope to be? What are the goals?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think our aim number one at the core of Monetize AI is to provide access, right, to creators so they are able to create their own AI agents and monetize them. So we definitely want to see like people actually making a solid income from AI agents, right?
Hmm.
Because our platform is about building AI agents as a service where you can build
Hmm.
an AI agent and offer it up as a service. So in a year's time, want to see literally hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people potentially creating their own AI agents and monetizing them. I think another thing, hopefully within a year's time, is that we've scaled the team. We have a very solid company culture, and we're really a household name. I think that's something we can definitely do. We're growing at pace where we can do that. And I guess another thing as well in a year's time is just honestly me just enjoying the journey, enjoying seeing Monetize AI change a lot of people's lives, change a lot of businesses as well, because that's a big part of our focus is to really enable businesses to gain revenue, change their models with AI agents. So just being able to see that impact, number one, that access and that return on investment for people, yeah, I'm more than happy with that in a year's time. But you can never predict things in a year's time because I said hundreds of thousands of users now. It could be tens of millions. Businesses scale at different, different rates. But yeah, we're just chasing the stars, not even the moon.
Charles, I can't thank you enough. This has honestly been like one of the, I shouldn't say this, but it's been one of the most interesting conversations we've done of these. And that's not to say the others aren't great. Of course, if
Yeah,
you're listening in, listen to all the others; they're fantastic. But it's really like you're. I really feel like you're at the beginning of something incredible, and I think it's so interesting
thank
to understand the steps taken, considered steps and journey that you've taken to get to where you are. And look, I wish you every success with the kind of next 12 months. Obviously, I'll be following the journey and just, yeah, thank you for being so open and honest and sharing. And hopefully, the rest of launch week is a little more seamless than maybe the beginning of it was.
you. Exactly. Now, thank you very much, Lloyd, for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I very much enjoyed this.
Thank you, mate.
Brilliant.